I need someone to talk to about C-dramas because there's no one in my life right now who watches them. My sister will watch K-dramas with me, but those are typically 12 to 16 episodes long, while C-dramas are usually double that. Maybe it evens out because K-dramas are typically an hour long, while C-dramas tend to be 45 minutes long. So you have to dedicate 16 hours to a K-drama and 20 plus to a C-drama. That's not a huge difference, but anyway, I need to yap about this drama to anyone who will listen. And if you're still here, that means you. So thanks for listening to me yap. This will be just a nice chat while I paint. I usually like to listen to stories while I paint, but this time I'll do the storytelling. I'll give you a recap of the episodes and tell you my thoughts, and you can tell me your thoughts in the comments. The drama I want to talk about today is called Pursuit of Jade. I waited until all the episodes came out and then I binge watched it because that's how I prefer to consume my media. So if you want to watch the drama as well, you can find it on Netflix. To set the scene, this drama is a historical romance, even though the kingdom of Dian that the story focuses on is fictional. The costumes and weaponry and everything are still based off of real ancient Chinese history, so it still feels very grounded in this world. This is not the first C-drama I've watched, but something that has stood out to me is how beautiful they are. I'm not talking about the actors, although they're beautiful too. I'm talking about the costumes, the sets, the soundtrack. Everything is lovely and intentionally immerses you in this world, and I really enjoy that because it feels like more than just a TV show. I really loved the soundtrack in this drama, so I recommend that you go listen to that. The location of this story takes place in the kingdom of Dian, and in this kingdom is the village of Linan, where they're having a winter celebration. This is how the story starts out. There's snow on the ground, but it's been cleared away from the paths and the courtyards. And it's sunny outside. There's children running around. There's musicians playing instruments. And some people are trying to catch a pig, which is going to be dinner. No one is able to catch it until a young woman arrives. She catches it and slings it over her shoulder like it's nothing. The female lead in this story is a butcher, so if you're a vegan or a vegetarian like me, just be forewarned that they do show some things. So if you're actually going to watch the drama, just be prepared for that. I wasn't totally prepared, even though I knew she was a butcher. I don't know why that took me by surprise. It wasn't too bad. I just fast-forwarded those parts. Our main protagonist is Fan Chang-yu, and I apologize for my pronunciation of these names. She is played by Tian Chi-wei, who has these big, beautiful doe eyes, and she's so charming and sweet. But this is one of those looks like a cinnamon roll will kill you kind of characters. She's small in stature, but muscular and has a strong sense of self. Now, this woman has kind of superhuman strength, which makes her stronger than most men. A lot of the time, these types of women with superhuman strength don't feel genuine, and it all feels forced, to the point where nowadays you hear strong female character and you cringe a little because these characters tend to just be a macho man in a woman's body. But that's not the case with Chang-yu. Everything about her feels genuine. She's genuinely kind-hearted, generous, thoughtful, hardworking, no nonsense, and just happens to be strong too. Because she's a butcher's daughter, some of the villagers look down on her, and they think she's a jinx. Her parents were recently attacked by bandits in the forest and died, after which she was dumped by the village scholar, who is the golden boy of the village. This situation, for whatever reason, really irritated me. She was engaged to this young scholar, Song-yeon, so her father had paid for all of his tuition because he thought this would help provide for his daughter's future. He paid for a lot of things on behalf of the Songs, acting as if they were already family. However, as soon as Chang-yun's parents died, Song-yeon's mother called off the engagement, and now wants Chang-yu to return the betrothal letter their families had signed. Chang-yu doesn't want to marry Song-yeon anymore, but still refuses to hand over this document because this is her only leverage to get the Songs to pay her back for Song-yeon's tuition. But the Songs refuse. They're those typical entitled people who are like, why are you making such a big deal about money? But also, they are making a big deal about money. It's so frustrating. At first I thought Songyong was just a weak character being pushed around by his mother, but he really is just shameless and so selfish. No redeeming qualities at all. He just gets worse and worse the more you see him. I don't know what Changyu saw in him, and to be fair, after he broke off the engagement, she doesn't know what she saw in him either. When he confronts her about the betrothal letter, she tells him she'd rather deal with pigs than with him. Did anyone find this character to just look a little bit off? I recently found out that Songyeon, the character of Songyeon, was played by one man, and then he got involved in kind of a scandal, and instead of keeping his parts in the show, they just replaced his face with another actor. So they used AI to put one actor's face on another actor's face. So it's just something about his character always felt really off to me, and at first I thought it was just because he is a shameless character who I didn't like, but upon learning that they used AI to put someone's face on top of another actor's body, maybe that's why. Maybe that was why I was getting these uncanny vibes from him. Anyway, Changyu isn't alone in the world, so don't worry. Most of the villagers like her, and she has a lot of friends in the village that care about her. She has a little 6-year-old sister, Ning, and she's super cute, of course, and Changyu would do anything for her. Ning has asthma. She's rather sickly and needs expensive medicine, which Changyu is worrying about providing for her because they don't have a lot of money. Despite all of this hardship, Changyu has stayed strong and undaunted. She's truly fearless and somehow still has a positive energy about her, in spite of all these negatives in her life. She is determined to take over her father's business and provide for herself and her sister. Something I really appreciated was that Changyu stands up to the villagers who gossip about her. She doesn't just take it and act like a victim. One of the villagers is an older woman named Kang, and she is particularly brutal in her gossip. She really seems to enjoy it. She comes back again and again in the story, happy to tell anyone who will listen that Changyu is a jinx. But again, Changyu doesn't let it bother her. In fact, at the winter festival, when Kang and some women are gossiping about her, she throws a bowl full of dirty water all over them. And she was washing up after the pig, so that's some gross water. But she tells them this will wash away all of your ill fortune, and that puts an end to the gossip. Changyu's home is situated a little bit away from the village, so after the celebration, she has to walk through the dark, snowy forest to get home to her sister. Snow is lightly falling, and the only sounds are her feet crunching the snow and the jingling of a bell that's tied to her pack. It's not as ominous as it kind of sounds. She's very cheerful walking home, but while she's walking, she trips over a lump in the snow. It's mysteriously shaped, so she wipes away the snow and finds a face. There's a body buried in the snow. To her credit, she doesn't run away screaming like I would have done. But that's not to say her first instinct isn't to get away as fast as she can. She just says, "Forgive me, be a good pig in this life, be a good person in the next." That's what she says when she's butchering a pig. And since this person is also close to death, I think this was instinctual for her to give that little blessing. So she brushes the snow back over the face and tries to walk away and mind her own business. She's talking to herself, saying, "You have a sister. You can't afford to help. Just go home. Just go home. Just go home." And then immediately turns around yelling, "I'll save you. Don't worry." Her moral compass is so strong it won't let it slide. She has to help anyone in need. The body turns out to be a wounded young man, and despite being buried in the snow, he's still alive, but just barely. She guesses he was attacked by the same bandits who took her parents' lives. So she puts him on her back and carries him home, hoping to save him, even though she knows she doesn't have enough money to take proper care of him. Remember, she barely has enough money for her sister's asthma medicine. I don't know how far Changyu had to carry him, but she's a tiny woman, so even with her strength, that had to be hard. She's not only carrying him on her back, but she also still has her backpack with all of her tools, so she's amazing, just so you know. Back home, she enlists the help of her next-door neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Zhao. They're this cute older couple that bicker a lot, but you can tell they love each other very much, and they give off strong parental vibes, even though they don't have any children. They take care of Changyu's little sister Ning during the day, while Changyu was working, and they're basically their parents now. The Zhaos help her dress the stranger's wounds, and they all agree to keep his presence a secret. The gossips have enough to talk about, and they don't also need to be talking about how the young Fan sisters have a strange man in their house. That would be a scandal. Also, there's a war going on, so it's suspicious to have a stranger there, and they could get into serious trouble for harboring him. Changyu's sister, Ning, asks if she saved him because he's so handsome. And Changyu says, no, a life is a life. Looks don't matter. To be honest, she hasn't even really noticed what he looks like. She only registers that he's someone who needs her help. At last, the mysterious young man wakes up for a little bit, and there's a moment when he's sitting up and they do a slow close-up on his face so we can bask in his beauty. And that's the moment Changyu actually acknowledges, oh, he is handsome, actually. And she suddenly gets shy and clearly wants him to see her in the best possible light. She doesn't want him to see her as a pig butcher, so she's trying to put her best foot forward. And I think we can all relate to that. We've all had a crush on someone and want them to see us in the best possible way, so maybe we try to hide parts of ourselves. The stranger tells Changyu that his name is Yongzhan. When she asks if he has any family left, he says no, but she tells him she will take care of him. She's such a kind-hearted person, so I think she would do this for anyone, but since she believes he was attacked by bandits like her parents, I think she's especially determined to help. Still, he's so injured that Changyu doesn't really expect him to recover, to the point that she and her little sister carve a piece of wood to use as a memorial tablet, since she can't afford a coffin. It's a thoughtful gesture, if a bit premature, because he starts making a recovery. Changyu realizes she's going to need more medicine for him, so she goes out and sells her mother's silver hairpin at a pawn shop. This is really hard for her to do, but she hopes to buy it back after she's got the business going again. Purchases 2 poor little pigs with the money. She tries to hide the pigs from Jung when she gets home because she still doesn't want him to realize what she does for work. If you can't tell, Youngjin is our male lead. He's played by Jung Jinghe, so he's tall, good-looking, and he has that amazing C-drama hair that's long and obviously not real, but it looks wonderfully swishy. I love it when they put it into a high ponytail because they move their heads dramatically to make it swish. It's just so funny to me to watch these grown men swish their hair like they're Ariana Grande. Anyway, this drama is definitely catered to the female gaze because Changyu plays the part of the supernaturally strong hero, and Jung possesses untold beauty. In fact, he's so pretty that his visuals have sparked kind of a controversy online. I guess he's just too pretty to be a general. But because he's the main lead, we know there's more to him than meets the eye. There's a flashback where we see him dressed in armor fighting. His comrades fall, and he finishes off the last of the enemy on his own. He's badly injured and eventually collapses in the snow. Even though he says he has no one left, a falcon arrives when he's alone in the room, and it has a message tied to its leg. He writes the village name, Linon, on a piece of paper and sends the falcon off. So he's communicating with someone, and it's clear that he is someone important. At first, I thought he was a prince or something, but it turns out he is a famous general of Dayan, the Marquis of Wan, who is known for his ruthless military strategy and impressive victories. This man had several different names that we hear throughout the drama, and that was kind of confusing, so we're just going to call him Jung, or the Marquis, for clarity, because those were the only names I could remember. He has a tragic backstory, of course. They all do, which is that his father fell in a battle, in a massacre called Jinzhou, and his mother soon after self-exited, leaving him in the care of his uncle, Wei Yan, who is the Chancellor of Dayan. This brings us to some palace intrigue. Honestly, I was struggling with this whole plotline. I haven't watched any palace dramas before, so I was having a really hard time keeping track of everything. I had to go to Reddit to find an explanation so I could figure it out. Hopefully I can describe this so it makes sense. Apparently a lot of people were struggling with this plotline. So we have the palace, right? So there's a whole court of officials. There's an emperor who, it's clear, he does not know what he is doing. He's young, and he was placed on the throne because he was convenient and easy to manipulate. And his older brother, the previous crown prince, was killed in a tragic fire. So the kingdom is left with this guy, and he's just so awkward and clearly out of his depth that it was physically painful to watch the scenes he was in. I could feel the social anxiety. We're all pretending he was in charge and knows what he's doing because that's what you do. He's the emperor. He has 2 advisors, or at least there's 2 main guys we're going to focus on for this story. They are Wei Yan, the male lead's uncle, and he's the chancellor, and an older gentleman, Minister Li, who is like 70 years old, and they're asking him, "Are you ever going to retire?" So Chancellor Wei and Minister Li represent 2 opposing factions who are both trying to control the emperor. For example, the emperor hears that the Marquis of Wuan, our male lead, has gone missing and is presumed dead. Minister Li suggests they mourn him and posthumously confer another title on him, but Chancellor Wei disagrees, saying that if the people go into mourning, it will hurt the army's morale. Then the emperor is put in the uncomfortable position of making a decision, and again, he's just not equipped to do that. Back in the village, soldiers are searching every household for refugees because they need bodies to send to the front lines for the war. They are close to finding Zheng, but Chengyu scares them away when she tells them she's a pig butcher, and they find some pig entrails. So Zheng finds out she's a butcher, and the next morning he overhears her telling her sister that it's expensive to feed a man, so she'll be reopening the family shop. And when Zheng finds out that she's a butcher, he is like a little scared about that at first, but Ning tells him, "Don't be scared of my sister." That resolves itself pretty quickly. In the meantime, we found out that Zheng is sending falcon messages to his best friend and military strategist to let him know where he is. Then Chengyu is faced with yet another problem because her uncle wants to take her house away. He claims that since her father died, it must go to the next male heir. He even gets some ruffians who work at the gambling den to intimidate Chengyu into giving the deed to the house to him. Things don't go as planned, though, because Chengyu's father not only trained her to be a pig butcher, but also to be a martial artist. She tells Ning to close her eyes and count to 10 while she beats the 4 ruffians up and chases them from her house. Ning's like, "Oh, I didn't even get to 9. Zheng is watching from the 2nd floor window and is quite impressed. The constable comes and makes the ruffians pay for damages and apologize to Chengyu. It seemed serious at first, but it wasn't that serious. Chengyu has this under control. But Chengyu goes back into the house afterwards and cries because her parents' memorial tablets were knocked over in the fight. She really misses her parents, and Zheng finds her, and she tells him not to tell anyone that she cried. So he sees that she's trying to hold it together for everyone, but there's no one she can really turn to but herself. Mr. and Mrs. Zhao, along with the constable, who was a friend of her father's, recommend that Chengyu get married so there's a male heir for the house. She needs a man to marry into her family rather than marrying into his. So basically, he would be taking her last name instead of her taking his. She's not sure how she can find someone to do this. Ning pipes up and says if they're going to pick someone to be her brother-in-law, she'd like the handsome gentleman from upstairs to be her brother-in-law. And the Zhaos agree that he's the most readily available option. They encourage her to ask him, and she says she will, but keeps chickening out. She doesn't want to pressure him or make him feel trapped. Besides that, she's also afraid he'll turn into another Song Yan. She's already had her heart broken once and can't abide for it to happen again. She feels like Zheng's a piece of high-quality jade, beautiful and valuable, but not hers. Plus, she's a butcher, so How can she ask him to marry a girl like her? Something that I think is interesting is there is a recurring theme of Jade throughout the story, which makes sense. It's called Pursuit of Jade, but Chungyu's name, the Yu, apparently means jade, and they refer to jade, and there's jade pieces that show up throughout the drama, so that's an interesting tidbit. And another thing that I think is interesting about C-dramas in general is that I feel like we have every conversation, and they take time in those conversations to really talk about their feelings and what's going on in their heads. They could certainly just convey these things in a look or a quicker conversation to move things along, but instead they slow down and let the characters sit with us for a bit. Sometimes it feels very much like a slice of life. There's certainly a balance to this, and it can go too far sometimes, and I start to get bored, but I can appreciate this choice because it's so true to life and forces us to slow down and further understand the characters. We work through things as they are working through things. That really struck me when Mrs. Zhao and Changyu were discussing Changyu's worries about asking Zheng to marry her. And in the end, she doesn't even need to ask him because he overhears her talking about her house problem and how marrying him would fix that problem. Now that I'm thinking about it, he eavesdrops a lot. The bedroom he's staying in is right above the courtyard, and the family has a lot of important conversations in the courtyard. So he's always just up there listening to what they're saying. So anyway, the next time she tries to bring it up, he just comes out and says he will marry her so she can keep her house. And it's also a way to repay her for her kindness, for saving his life. She's so happy and assures him that she will take great care of him and hire the best physician, and that he can leave whenever he wants after the house has been officially signed into her name. If he decides to stay, she also promises to provide for him. But he says he will leave once he's well enough and that he will grant her a wish. So she thinks about it for a few moments and says that her wish is to rebuild her father's pig pens and have 20 to 30 pigs. He's taken aback by this. He just looks stunned and says, well, why don't you think bigger about this? So she takes another few moments and says, very well, 100 pigs. And he's just so confused. This girl only thinks about pigs and how much silver she can get for them. She starts thinking about it some more, and she's like, I guess I could do 200 pigs, but I think that's too many. The next day, Changyu goes into the village to open up her father's shop. For the first day, she has a really good deal so she can lure customers away from the other village butcher. He's not happy about that, obviously, but most of the villagers are supportive of Changyu. She spreads the word about her engagement and purchases wedding clothes for herself and Zheng. She also hears a rumor that the Marquis of Wuan has fallen in battle, which makes everybody sad because he's such an important figure of their military. He's a legend because he's the youngest general of Dayan or something. People feel so strongly about him that there's some fistfights that break out in the village because people don't believe that he could possibly have fallen in battle, and how dare you even suggest it? And remember that Zheng is the Marquis of Wuan, so he's back home sneezing while everyone in the village is talking about him, because legend says that if people are talking about you, you sneeze, and that is why you sneeze. So next time you sneeze, just remember that. Changyu makes a memorial tablet for the Marquis of Wuan and burns incense for him that night and makes Zheng sit with her while she does it. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's bad luck since he is in fact the Marquis of Wuan and he's helping someone burn incense to help his soul make it safely to the afterlife. I don't know. Let me know what you think. After hearing about Changyu's engagement, her uncle again sends the ruffians from the gambling den to look for the deed to the house. If he can get the deed before she gets married, he can claim the house. Changyu is at her shop working, so the ruffians arrive and they taunt Zheng. He's the only one home, and he seems incapacitated in his current state, hobbling around with a crutch and unable to even sit up straight because of his wounds. For most of this drama, Zheng is wounded in some way. For a while there, he was constantly doubled over in pain. Anyway, Mr. Zhao enlists some neighbors to chase the ruffians away. And Jung manages to get the house deed away from the head ruffian, whose name I think is Jin. And we're going to give him a name because at this point I realized he was going to be a recurring character. So remember that. The head ruffian's name is Jin. Chang-yu comes home just in time to knock down Jin, and at the sight of her, he immediately changes his tune and says, "You misunderstand why we're here. We're just here because we heard you're engaged. We came to congratulate you, actually." And she is so unamused. She says, "You came to congratulate me carrying weapons? You scared my husband while he's recovering." So they start bowing to Jung, saying, "Oh, this is your new husband? We didn't realize. So sorry for scaring him when he is so ill. We came to congratulate him. In fact, here's some money." They start pulling coins from their pockets and putting them in Jang's hands. The ruffians really aren't that serious. They seem serious at first, but they're not. They're more like the comedic henchmen of a Disney cartoon, to be honest. Or, you know what? They started to make me think of the crew from Crash Landing on You, that K-drama, if you know that one. That one's my favorite. The 4 ruffians reminded me of those 4 guys. After they leave, Jung and Chang-yu have a little moment while she patches him back up. Like I said, he's always injured. He's always reopening his wounds because he tries to do too much. He won't just sit still and let himself heal. But I think he likes her having to take care of him, and she likes spending time with him. He helps Chang-yu craft an argument to keep the house, because even with the marriage, she still has to go to court and present her case to the magistrate, which I think is dumb. For this, she wants him to go present her case and basically be her lawyer, but Dayan law says the head of the household must represent themselves in court, and since Chang-yu is the head of the house, she must go. But Jung writes a speech for her, because they find out that he can write so well. They hold a little mock court session in the living room where he learns that she can read a little but doesn't know all the words, so she has to memorize the speech. And I thought it was interesting that Chang-yu can read a little bit, but not enough to really understand contracts and things. I feel like in these sorts of dramas, the character either is well-read and know they're a scholar, or they don't know anything. So it's interesting that she's right in between there. While she's memorizing, Song-young shows up on her doorstep. He's the village scholar, remember? And he asks her to be his concubine, so she doesn't have to marry a crippled refugee. That's what he says. She chastises him for looking down on Jung, saying he's just as smart and educated as he is, plus he knows martial arts, because he was obviously a soldier. He writes better, and he's 10 times as handsome, which is certainly true. Besides that, he's helping her in her time of need, helping her fight injustice. And she accuses Yeon of just wanting to look good in front of the neighbors, that he doesn't really care for her. Yeon gets angry that she is refusing him, and grabs her hand, but Jung shows up out of nowhere and pushes him out of the house and onto his backside into the street. Yeon is so angry, he accuses Chang-yu of being unfaithful. Like, no, you're the one who broke off the engagement, and you're just mad she found herself another man so fast who's 10 times better than you are. This is my favorite moment. There's this cute moment where Jung and Chang-yu are flaunting their coupleness in front of Yeon to make him jealous, and Jung pulls her close, and Chang-yu says, "He's my rightful husband now," and gives him a peck on the cheek, and Jung hesitates for a moment and then gives her a peck too. It's so cute, and I'm obsessed with this scene. From what I can tell, it was unscripted too. The actress was like, "This feels right," and they just went with it because their chemistry is so adorable. This is my favorite part, and I would tell you to watch the drama just for this part. Jung continues to put his calligraphy skills to use by writing poems and selling them in the village bookshop. He earns enough money that he can buy back the silver hairpin Chang-yu sold to pay for his medicine, and enough that he can contribute to the household expenses while Chang-yu establishes her shop. You can tell he cares very much for the sisters and wants to help as much as he can before he returns to his position as the Marquis. And it's very clear that he's the one who fell in love first. Like, there's that moment when he first woke up and Changyu was like, oh, he's attractive. But I don't think she's not really in love yet. Jung, for sure, is. And it's really cute how much he cares for her and wants to take care of her. But obviously he's lying about who he is. He's in a different social class, he's in charge of the army, and he seems to want to keep those two lives separate. This trope is annoying, for sure, but it does keep you in suspense, wondering when it's all going to blow up in his face, because it always does, and it's no exception here, just you wait. Speaking of mistaken identity, there's another character we have to add to our list, and that is Lord Lee. He is the grandson of Minister Lee, so let's call Minister Lee Grandfather Lee, because we're dealing with members of the same households, like the Lees and the Ways, and there's a lot to keep track of. Even the soldiers in the households have the same name as the family that they're serving. Not because they're all related, but because they take on that household's name as a sign of loyalty. So it gets real confusing real fast. Anyway, Grandfather Lee suspected that Jung was still alive, so he sent Lord Lee to go investigate. Don't really understand why, but here we are. He goes to investigate, but doesn't really tell anyone who he is. Changyu just thinks he's a scholar. Lord Lee gets a crush on Changyu when they bump into each other in the forest, and he's very disappointed that she has a fiancé. He does at one point meet the fiancé and realizes that it's the Marquis because, obviously, back at court, they know each other, and their families don't like each other. I think he's glad that Jung is still alive, though, because he's important to Dian and to keeping the kingdom safe. I really thought that Lord Lee was going to play more of an important part in the drama. He was giving off strong second male lead vibes, but I wouldn't call him the second male lead. I'm not even sure if he counts as the third or fourth lead. So I was really surprised by that. I thought he would play more of a part in this drama. So anyway, some time passes. The wedding happens the following week at Changyu's house. She's in her beautiful red wedding gown, and they have musicians and fireworks, and everyone in the village has come because they're curious about the husband Changyu is bringing into her family. They wonder, what kind of a man could he be? She found him so quickly. There's lots of rumors circulating about him. Song-yong shows up right before the wedding to beg Changyu again not to marry Jung and instead be his concubine. It feels gross just saying it. Like, he's not even offering to marry her, just to let her be, like, the side piece so that he can marry someone more important. Changyu obviously says no, and he brings out this box that has 2 clay dolls in it that Changyu apparently gave to him when they were 6 years old. He says it was a token of love, and he wants to give it to her husband as a wedding gift. Jung comes out of the house just then, dressed in his own wedding robes. And of course, he looks amazing, so the villagers are very impressed. The village gossip, Kang, is there, and her eyes are wide. She's like, who started the rumor that Changyu's husband is ugly? And the villager standing next to her is like, you started that rumor. Jung comes and stands next to Changyu and takes her hand. Yana's like, okay, I'll give you one more chance. And Changyu just knocks the box of dolls to the ground and smashes them with her foot. And then she and Jung go to get married. She doesn't even give him another look, and he doesn't deserve one. The musicians suddenly start playing and someone sets off fireworks, so he startles and he just looks ridiculous because he is ridiculous. Everyone in attendance laughs at him because obviously the real catch is Jung. Changyu is much better off this way. The party lasts the whole day, and finally it is night. The wedding night. The Zhaos take Ning home with them because they're really hoping that even though it was a match of convenience, Changyu and Jung will really fall in love and be a family. Changyu is very reluctant to go back to her room because her new husband is there, and she just feels so awkward. They both decided the marriage was just for show. At last, she does go up to her room to at least help him with fresh bandages. He's trying to dress them himself, but they're mostly on his back, so that's a little too tricky. He has to take off his shirt, of course, so she's momentarily distracted, but then notices the scars on his back. They're different from the wounds. So she asks if they're from being a soldier who protects caravans, because that's the story he told her, that he was a soldier who protected important people in caravans. Her father was also a soldier who protected caravans before leaving to become a butcher. So maybe she's thinking Jung might also follow the same path and settle down with her. While Changyu is back outside getting some water, she realizes that her aunt and uncle are waiting outside on the street. They suspect that the marriage is fake and they still want the house, so they're hoping to see Changyu go to another room instead of staying with her new husband. That's what Changyu was going to do, but she can't do that now. But Jung has an idea. He puts some candles by the window and pulls Changyu close, and they put on a show because the candles are casting their shadows onto the paper in the windows, so kind of looks like they're kissing. Jung and Changyu kind of have a moment, like maybe they'll kiss for real. But they don't. He seems disappointed. Honestly, I wasn't sure about Jung at first. Obviously, he is attractive, but I can't watch a drama if the male lead is waving around too many red flags. And Jung has some red flags, but honestly, his character is rather refreshing. He's always very thoughtful and polite. And for example, when Changyu gives him soup made of pig intestines. This is the part of the pig no one else really eats, so she can't really sell it. So that's what she and Ning eat. He clearly is grossed out, but he doesn't want to hurt her feelings or seem ungrateful, so he eats it to please her. She recognizes that he's probably used to eating much finer food, and he really tries to convey that he isn't being snobbish, he's just really not used to eating pig intestines, and is grateful she's sharing precious food with him. Like I said, he's very respectful of Changyu and respects her work, even though it does make him uncomfortable at first. His character can adapt and grow. He's thoughtful and kind even before he's in love with her, and that's really nice to see. And it's nice to see him. He's the one falling first. There's some yearning, so if you want to see some yearning, you need to watch this drama. And I don't think he's too pretty to be a general. I think he's perfect. Anyway, until next time, bye.